So I will be recording. If at any point you share something that you don't want to have on the recording, that's totally fine. Just let me know. I'll take it out of the edited. I'll edit it out before sharing with others. This is what we're talking about. London mission in June from the 11th to 17th, taking a group over for London Tech Week. I've just got to let one more into the room and I cannot get my mouse to work. There we go. So first of all, just letting you know that we do have funded places for City of Gold Coast residents and also for South Australian residents. And I'll be speaking about those sponsorship opportunities and the eligibility criteria for both. Just a little bit about us. So we're a venture capital firm. We invest in B2B tech companies from across Australia and New Zealand, right at the point that they're considering expanding to UK, US. So we typically invest around the Series A stage, and beyond the capital, we help those companies enter those markets. We also help with strategic support, so help in terms of your frameworks and systems for building a high growth company, and also founder support, so more on the humanistic side, but making sure that you can grow at least as fast as your company and maintain your mental well-being during that process. In terms of what we look for, we basically invest in companies that have proven demand, that are solving a must-have problem for the business, for their customers, and that they are at that critical juncture where they're looking to scale into those markets, the UK, US. Here's our team. So we have Elaine and Maren on the call today. I'll just check none of the other guys are in. But outside of that, we also have a network of investors who are themselves founders, investors. They've worked a lot in this space, and two of our key venture partners who are also our shareholders, as well as being investors, but Michael Dempsey, who built EasyDebit through to public listing, and also Adrian DeMarco, who built Technology One through to public listing, are both active in our portfolio as well. So just quickly, in terms of London, so this will be, I think it's my 7th or 8th time over to the UK leading a mission to London Tech Week. The reason we choose London Tech Week in particular, for those who haven't been before, it's basically a week in the calendar that the UK earmarks where anyone in the city can run an event. So what that means is that week there's something like 300 events on across the City of London. They range from anything from 30-minute quick fireside chats through to networking events, through to workshops, through to 3-day conferences. So usually there's a 3-day AI tech conference, a 3-day ed tech conference. There's usually a fintech conference. But the other advantage of this week is that there's something like 75 international delegations that come into the UK to take part. There's something like 75,000 visitors that descend on London. That's from broader regional UK, the rest of Europe, and the rest of the world. But it's also a week in which a lot of the locals know to keep their calendar clear to have meetings. So it's a very easy time to have doors open for you to get into meetings. Everyone there knows this is the week where we set aside to meet all these delegates that are coming in. The other thing that's come up on previous missions and previous calls is it's also a good time if you want to run events in the UK. So depending who you're targeting, previous participants have used London Tech Week as a way to spin up an event to attract particular clients, potential customers, and actually host activity on the ground, because you can spin up your own satellite event. In terms of our mission, or in terms of why London, I personally think there's a big fixation in Australia on North America, just because that's where we consume all the tech startup news from. It's where we tend to think of as a natural market to go to. It's a fairly well-trodden path as well. But if you actually look at the UK market, it's second in the world globally for investment funding. It's also the home to a large number of multinationals, corporates. So if you're in B2B, London itself is this nice, dense centre of companies that are within easy walking distance or jumping on the tube. But more than that, because of the density of startups in London as well, those companies are very used to doing business with startups. So for those of you who are banging on doors at an enterprise level in Australia and being told that you're too early, that you don't have 2 years of financials to demonstrate XYZ, it's too risky to do business with you. What we find in places like London, and equally true in Tel Aviv, in Israel, is that the corporates there are much more familiar with early stage technology companies. They have procurement processes in place to be able to deal with startups, And they're also much more open to investing in and acquiring startups. The other thing about the UK, because of the commonality of common law, and again, this depends on the field that you're in, but it is something like 29% cheaper to do business in the UK than the US, just by virtue of that cost saving of having, common legal system, common frameworks, common types of processes. Then that actually gets cheaper again if you then go to places like Birmingham or West Midlands or into the regions, where again the cost of living is cheaper, the cost of talent is cheaper. And part of our week will actually be getting those market briefings, not just on London, but on the broader UK opportunity as well. The other thing I'd add to this one is post-Brexit. So one of the missions I led, we were actually in London for the night of the vote. And it was amazing waking up the next day in London and having most of the population in tears. It was a very unexpected result for Londoners. But post-Brexit, the UK government is really doubling down on the Commonwealth. So you would have heard of the FTA, the Free Trade Agreement, the FinTech Bridge Program, all different new visas. But really, the UK government is looking for wins within the Commonwealth. So there's a lot of incentives. There's a lot of support to help you set up in the UK. There's a lot of quasi-government agencies that are funded, whose full-time remit is to help you set up in the UK. So there's a lot of support to get you into market as well. But also there's commonality of language, culture. I mean, we love beer, love cricket. But there's also some cultural nuances you need to be aware of as well when entering the UK. It's actually not a straightforward translation. In terms of the mission itself, so who it's for, we're taking founders, investors, and ecosystem leaders. We run different streams for those. And again, even within the founder stream, if we have a dominant sector that emerges, so last year, for example, we had 13 health tech companies in the delegation. So we had some substreaming around the health tech focus. In terms of the UK itself, I guess it's sector strengths. I mean, absolutely fintech, cyber. They do have a real focus around AI and AR, VR as technology itself. But EdTech, creative industries. If you go up north, more towards Manchester, it's a bit more engineering based. There's a lot of reg tech, legal tech, and property tech and health tech. But it is quite a broad market, but there are definitely some themes that are stronger, and happy to answer any questions on anyone specifically in terms of your own fit for the UK or for the mission. In terms of why participate in the mission and what you can expect to get out of it, and I'll definitely invite Elaine and Maren to add a few points here as well. But yeah, the mission is well suited if you're just looking at, should I enter the UK? Where should the UK fit in my global expansion plan? Should I go to another market first, or does the UK make sense as a first global expansion market? But more importantly, it really focuses on the how. So we're big advocates of founders already know what to do. They just might not necessarily know how to do it, or maybe not the optimal way of how. So we put you in front of Aussie founders during the week who have been there, done it, can share the practical insights, save you from making the mistakes that they made, and just help you understand the practical reality of how to enter the UK market. We put you in front of UK investors so you can understand the nuances of raising capital in the UK. We run a half-day session ourselves with UK investors and getting you ready to, or at least understand what it takes to be ready to pitch there, getting you in front of clients, potential partners, customers, but plugging you into the ecosystem. So our goal is to get you connected so that you can run and thrive in market independent of us. So plugging you into the enablers that can support you. Probably for me, that the biggest reason for going as part of a mission and a cohort like this is actually the cohort effect itself. So if any of you have been on something like this before, you would know just that bonding that occurs during an intense week where you're in a different market. You connect over a beer at 3 a.m. in the morning in the hotel lobby when you can't sleep because your mind is blown by what you heard that day, and 6 other people in the group can't sleep, and you share insights with one another. And that's the legacy piece that lasts when you come back home, is having that network that you're part of other founders who are on a similar journey, trying to also expand globally with their company. And you can share those connections, share the insights, the lessons learned, and it just makes for a much faster pace of learning, but also normalizes some of the human emotion of being a founder. Like we all know, we do find comfort in the discomfort of others, and knowing that we're on a shared emotional journey with others is somewhat cathartic as well. I already talked about why London Tech Week in particular is a good time to be in market, just in terms of the doors that are available to be opened and everything else. But I do think it's actually the best time to enter the UK. You can definitely do it at other times, but in terms of having accessibility to networks, it's a great time to be over in market. Is there anything I missed there, Elaine or Murren, that you wanted to add from a perspective of why we should, what the benefits of participating in a mission?
No, not so much on the benefits, but one question that's come up from some participants has been, this sounds great, but will I actually have enough time to do stuff outside of what the mission has planned? And I guess I just want to reiterate or give people comfort that there is still plenty of time to do your own thing. And that is go see potential customers, clients, investors. We had a number of participants who were doing both last year and doing both successfully. So don't feel like you'll be overscheduled. There'll be plenty of time to do your own thing as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And just to give some context to that, which I think it's a couple of slides ahead, but out of the London Tech Week schedule, we basically pick what we think are the best events for the group. But equally, you can search for those events in the London Tech Week schedule that you think best suit you, that might not be applicable to the rest of the group, and absolutely go and leverage those and attend those. We also set up, most of the week is actually content that we create. So a lot of the work Murren does is setting up our own events and getting us into our own meetings as a cohort. But absolutely, the goal of this is, if you want to get in front of customers, we help plug you into those networks so you can go and have your own meetings. And for a lot of participants, they choose to stay on an extra week or even half a week after the mission, just to have some extra clear calendar time where you can catch up with all the people you meet during the week, because you'll meet a couple of hundred people, many of which you'll want to catch up afterwards. And it is much easier if you're still in the same time zone and can have a face-to-face, if you can spare that extra time as well.
Yeah, I think one thing I would sort of underline there again and really highlight is really that value of that cohort experience, and we're learning with each other but from each other, and sometimes it can be quite intimidating looking at an entirely new market, traveling internationally, just really finding your way around. So having that group experience and a little bit of security in that group, I think is a massive value add. But to Elaine's point, at the same time, and to Aaron's point, having that freedom to run on your own agenda if that's what you want to do. We certainly suggest what we think you should attend and participate in, but there is no obligation to always move around as a group through the entire week. So I think it's having the best of both worlds, having that group, but also having the freedom to make sure that you tick off things that are on your own agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of specifics around the mission, so the dates are 11th to the 17th. So we kick off on a Sunday afternoon. We included in the mission is your accommodation for the 6 nights. This is so that we're all co-located together. It does create a better bonded cohort. It just also means it's easier to move us around London. We pull together all the schedule based on the cohort that's selected. So there'll be 30 plus events in your calendar for the week, and obviously all those additional ones we were talking about. There'll be 5 of our team over in the UK with you, helping lead the mission. So I'll be leading with Murren, supported by Elaine, Don, and Jack. And we can also run little sessions during the week, but our goal is to lead you through the London Tech Week schedule. You also get a guidebook. So we prepare a lot of content in advance. We have an online microsite of information to help you prepare for the mission. We run 2 pre-mission workshops to get you prepared, both in terms of how to structure everything back home so that you have the operational license when you're in market to go and really hit at full speed and not be distracted by day-to-day business back in Australia. but also how to get your pitch ready for the UK market, get you plugged into the network so you can start arranging meetings ahead of going over. We also give you a little workbook to work through for the week. So just making sure that you're starting to think of the questions you need to answer during the week in terms of how do you structure an entity to enter the market, what steps are needed, what visas do you need, everything else. You get a little Oyster card, which I know sounds quite minor in the scheme of things, but it just gives you unlimited travel on the tube and the bus for the week so you can get around, some mission swag and other collateral. There's also 2 mission dinners that are included. Outside of that, though, the exclusions, you have to sort your own flights to and from the UK, your own travel insurance, your own transfers to and from the airport. We do say you have to cover your own meals, but to be fair, most nights there's an event on somewhere and we'll be dragging you all around places. Most of those events are catered. So if you were doing it really tight, I think it's pretty easy to find food through an event while you're on the mission. But there'll be 2 official mission dinners. You're sort of responsible for other costs outside of that. In terms of what we'll do during the week, so the rough cadence is we kick off on the Sunday afternoon with a bit of a welcome briefing, a chance to get to meet the rest of the cohort, get to know each other. We then, Tribe is hosting all of the Australian and New Zealand delegations that are heading over. So there'll be about 100 to 150 of us for some drinks, networking drinks on the Sunday afternoon. And then we'll disappear away for our own little private cohort dinner just to get to know each other a bit more ahead of the week. Monday, we'll kick off with the official opening of London Tech Week. The theme of Monday is all about understanding the UK market, understanding the broader European market, understanding the different incentives and programs that are available to help you enter the UK, but just understand the size of the opportunity. Tuesday is more focused around how to enter the market. So we'll have some workshops delivered, which will help you understand, refining product market fit in the UK, the practical steps around HR, tax, legal. I've missed something in there. I can't remember what it was. Maren, if you remember the other one. Visas.
Accounting.
Yes. So we have a few different sessions, which will also include workshop time. And then the rest of the week is really around getting you in front of investors. So we run a half-day investor panels and workshops, getting you plugged into different customer segments. Hopefully this year as well, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but we'll be meeting with Facebook, with their engineering teams, just to understand insights into how do you scale an engineering team? What are the insights into managing large-scale developer teams? So as you build out, you know how to recruit and build those teams. Yeah, just to visually present what the schedule looks like, this is what it looks like. Lots of people at lots of events. I think we pretty much know. It is a lot of fun as well. Just some common reasons to not attend that come up. So when founders or investors say, oh, I'm not going to go this year, often it's down to, well, we're not ready yet. My counter argument there is, how do you know what it means to be ready to enter a market until you've actually gone there and understood what readiness means? So for me, I'm actually a huge advocate of getting on planes early, going and understanding your market early so that you know what you need to be doing now in order to get your company ready to enter the market. Because often what we think needs to be done is not actually the right stuff, and we might spend time on the wrong things. Those second two are around, can't afford the time or can't afford the cost of going. Look, that can definitely be true, depending on where you are in your life cycle and your focus. But equally, I think we should probably measure the opportunity cost of not going and the time and money that could be saved building the wrong things, potentially, if we haven't gone to market and understood it first. The second last one here, cheaper to do it on my own. Absolutely. There are cheaper ways to go on to the UK than through a mission like ours. But again, what I'd look at is the value that you get beyond just the travel costs in terms of the mission schedule, the networks, the doors that we're able to open. So just some testimonials here. I won't dwell on these. Steve Baxter's been on 3 previous missions I've led to the UK. Interestingly, he always had the same emotional journey of most participants, which is Monday morning, wow, isn't this amazing? The UK is great. This is phenomenal, highly energized. By Wednesday afternoon, it's pretty much doom and gloom and wow, Australia's really screwed. How do we compete globally? And by Friday, back up again and go, okay, we've got to get home and get cracking because there's a lot to be done. Here's some testimonials from last year. So feel free to look up any of our participants from last year, reach out to them directly, whether they're named here or not. You can see all of the previous years, last year's participants through our website. I'm more than happy to share the full list of who went, and just reach out to any of them and ask, what was your experience? What did you get out of it? I'm sure they'd all be open to that conversation. I've pretty much already talked about this one, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but these are the basic conclusions in the week. The price for the mission is normally $7,990. There is an early bird price at the moment, but for the sponsored places with the South Australian Government and the City of Gold Coast, this is what is covered and included as part of that sponsorship. It does just exclude your flights, airport transfers, and most other meals, as I said before. That's deliberate. So there is a reason why we want you to have some skin in the game. It changes how you think about the mission. It changes commitment. It changes outcomes just by having some skin in the game. In terms of, so I know on this call, we've got mostly South Australian residents and applicants. So just to let you know, if you are based in South Australia or you have a company that is mostly based in South Australia, you are eligible to apply for a sponsored place. Similarly, same rules apply for City of Gold Coast. Both cities are, or the state of South Australia and the City of Gold Coast are funding up to 10 places each. And these are open to founders and investors. In terms of the criteria, so it must be over 18 years of age to participate in the mission. For founders, we're really looking for founders of companies that can get the most out of the mission, is how I describe it. So definitely companies where there's a relevance to the UK market, companies that have the UK on their roadmap for expansion, whether that's 6 months out or 2 years, 3 years out, it's okay. But also you've got to be willing and able to participate in the mission. So this isn't just a way to get a funded 6 nights accommodation and completely disappear. We really want you to be an active participant in the mission. Also, most importantly, I think to add here is there is a commitment post-mission. So there is an expectation that you will come back and share your insights and knowledge with others. So that might be for you through blog posts. It might be, we'll be hosting panel events in Adelaide and Gold Coast and elsewhere, but sharing on those panels, your experience of the UK market, insights for other founders and investors to learn from. There'll also be some post-mission surveys and reports that are needed. So each participant does need to actually complete a one-page report post-mission just on the outcomes that they gained, and we'll have some check-ins afterwards. So I know that's a little bit of overhead, but I think a small price to pay. And for us, it's making sure that we're effective in mission delivery, and for the government, making sure it's an effective use of their fund and funding deployment. For investors, it is on a case-by-case basis. So both governments are keen to activate more investors and also to help more investors get plugged into the global networks. So if you are an investor, you can use the application form to apply. Just in the About Business box, just talk about yourself a little bit more, but we'd love to have investors applying and coming on the mission as well. That's pretty much it from me talking. So I'm going to get my mouse to work again, stop the screen, and we can switch over to some Q&A. So Maren has just dropped the link to the application form for the South Australian, for the mission page, which has a link to the South Australian funding and the Gold Coast funding as well. Any questions about the mission, about the sponsored places? No problem, Bart. You've got a bell, no problem at all. But any questions, you can feel free to drop them over in the chat window, or just open your mic. Roanne, I think you were.
Hi, just a quick question. I did apply for the sponsored place. I just wanted to, I can't remember whether I received the notification email saying that you received my application, and I just wanted to confirm whether you guys send out confirmation.
Yes, so I can see from your background, your company, and I do remember that name coming through in the application, so we absolutely received it. And just on that, someone did ask, so someone had submitted one but wanted to update their application. Unfortunately, our system doesn't allow for an update, but you are more than welcome to resubmit an updated application. And if you'd like a copy of your original application, feel free to email me and I'll download that for you so you've got the original text and then can resubmit an update. Dennis.
Now, Erin, is it the Holiday Inn that they're staying in?
No, so Dennis has participated in previous London mission that I led. No, Dennis, we're actually upgraded now. It's much better than the old digs. So this year we should be in the Ibis down the bottom end of Shoreditch, closer to Whitechapel. That's booked at the moment. If we're lucky, we might get into the Hyatt that's just about 100 metres down the road from there, but we should be at the Ibis.
Oh, right. No, I just found that area was so easy to walk into the centre of London.
Yeah, so where we'll be this year will be even closer. So for those of you familiar with London, the area around Shoreditch, which, rewind 12 years ago, 15 years ago, used to be a really rough end of town. It went through a real revitalisation, a lot of it due to the startup sector and startup scene and Silicon Roundabout forming. And it's a bit of a hive of activity in the startup world. So we tend to always focus around Shoreditch. This year we'll be staying closer down to Whitechapel, which means the tube options are much easier to get into the city. It's like City of London, little township, also across the river or over to the Strand, like the QE2 Centre where a lot of the other events are running. So still very central.
Oh, that's good.
Is anyone unsure of whether the mission is for them or unsure whether the UK market is for them? More than happy to chat about those points.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have an understanding of what stage your business or your product should be at.
Yeah, so in terms of this mission, so we've had everything on previous missions from pre-revenue through to, I think the latest stage company I've taken on one of these was probably turning over about 12 mil ARR. Actually, no, maybe there was one later stage than that, maybe about 20 mil ARR. I think there's two real subsets. One is answering the question of, is the UK market for me? And in that context, is it also not for me? And I think that's one of the big lessons that can come out of these missions, is actually categorically ruling it out, or at least putting it lower on the schedule. And then there's an element more of those that already have identified the UK. Maybe they've already got operations in the UK. They might already have team members in the UK, but it's more of that practical how. So how do I scale in market? How do I properly structure this? How do I get the right entities in place? How do I raise capital in the UK? How do I expand from here into Europe? So they're the two elements. In terms of timing with your own business, then it's more of a question of, the other elements that you have underway in terms of your own funding, revenue growth, everything else. One thing I would say is, my experience helping founders through these, I've led about, I think this is my 20th mission. I should actually count it. But taking them to different markets is often there's this narrative in the Australian ecosystem that, we should find product market fit first here and then expand. That the challenge with that is often we have to refine product market fit all over again in an international market, or at least the marketing message behind that piece of it. So, and again, that's contextual depending on what you're working on. Did that help, Kat?
Yeah, that did. Thank you. It's just hard to know, isn't it? It sounds to me like it could be one or the other. Have a $12 million revenue or none.
Yes, it's a spectrum. So we take companies who are, the full gambit in between there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's frequently we'll have companies that have raised no capital to date, others that they're Series A. I'll give some examples maybe of outcomes from previous missions just to give a bit of context too. So, so one founder I took over, they were adamant the UK market was for them. In fact, last year we had a health tech company that's a good example of this. They thought the UK market, the NHS scheme, they were health tech, would absolutely be for them. But once they got over in market, they met the different trusts and understood the trust system that sits under the NHS. They realised, no, the UK market was going to be a real battleground for them to enter. So they actually returned home with the view of we'll focus, double down on Australia, and then likely go US. So for them, the outcome was actually saving a whole heap of capital, expanding to a market that just wouldn't have worked for them. Another founder I took over, so Chris Milligan from Adepto, he was actually thinking his roadmap would be US first, then UK, came on the UK mission, decided actually the UK was the bigger opportunity. Within 3 months, he'd relocated the business to the UK, and within 3 years, actually exited in the UK. He's an angel investor. He spends half his life over there, half his life back here, and invests both sides. Another founder, so just in terms of getting some good outcomes from the trip, he's thinking about maybe encouraging your investors or people you want as your investor to participate on the mission. So Andrew Walker, who had a company called 3 Weeks, he was based out of Sydney. He came on the London mission, and he had an investor that he really wanted to invest in his company. And he'd been hunting him down for a while, and he reached out to him, a guy called Paul Mansfield, and said, "Hey, Paul, come on this mission with me, come to the UK." So they got to hang out for the week. By the end of the week, they'd spent enough time together that Paul actually agreed to invest in Andrew's company. Paul went on to become chairman of the company, and Paul was actually also running a publicly listed company that he was chairman of, and that company ended up acquiring Andrew's company a couple of years later. So it was a smart strategic move from Andrew, inviting someone he wanted along who's an investor. And one other random anecdotal story. Last year, one of the founders from WA went on the mission. At the time, he was closing an angel round. And when he came back home and met with his investors and gave them the updated roadmap of global expansion, saying, "Wow, we're going to go to the UK, we're doing this, we're doing X, Y, Z, here's the market, here's what we learned." He actually got pushback from one of his lead investors. And that lead investor said, "No, I don't want you to go global. I don't want you to go to the UK," hit some friction and ended up pulling his term sheet and not investing. And Dave, the founder, his comment was, "Wow, you guys just saved me from having an investor on my cap table who would never have agreed with my global expansion plans. You've just saved me from 10 years of heartache having an investor that just wouldn't have aligned with me." So there are these random outcomes that you would never expect. One other is, it was actually a founder I took over. He went on 3 London missions. The reason being, each time he ended up getting more business from the rest of the cohort that it paid for his trip 3 times over. So he's like, "I'm just going to keep going these and keep getting more business from the other companies that are on the trip." So again, it's contextual, but the outcomes are often fairly random and unpredicted as well. Any other
Aaron,
questions?
there's a question from John in the chat asking when and how the applications are being reviewed.
Sure. Good question. Sorry, I missed that. So the process is applications close midnight this Sunday. So now that's midnight our time. So Queensland, you actually get an extra half hour now. So 12:29 a.m. Monday morning is when applications close. Our team does the first review. So Jack, our analyst, does the eligibility assessment to make sure that you are actually a South Australian company and or resident, and that you meet the other criteria. We then review and shortlist the 10 names that we think should get funded. We then put that to the South Australian government for final sign-off. So they have veto rights on the list. But I've had a few of these before with funding from South Australia, so they're actually really good operators. So they tend to back our decision. And we aim to let everyone know really quickly. So we're aiming to let everyone know ideally by mid next week, but you might have to bear with us a little bit just in terms of getting the approvals.
And Easter.
And Easter, that's true.
Oh, Aaron, did you want me to just speak about my involvement in 2008?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please, Dennis.
Well, when I was approved, it was March of 2018. So South Australian government approved it. we then went through a process of connecting with companies. And this particular product was a payments product. So we went into a situation of connecting with banks and Visa and MasterCard. I then landed in London, I think it was 3 days before the start of Aaron's mission. And those 3 days I had 4 appointments a day. And then on the Friday, that's the Friday of the end of the mission, we got all of Friday to be able to go through and have second meetings with the companies that we had before the mission started. I found that going over on the mission was a great advantage because I was able to say we're with the South Australian Government mission, trade mission, and everyone was very receptive. People made appointments for us, and it was that we planned it so that with those 3 days that I was there before the trade mission started, we got in some very good appointments. Like the CEO of Citibank was a pleasure to meet him, and Lloyds Bank, the CFO of Lloyds Bank. In fact, we went to lunch on the Friday with Lloyds Bank at the London Club, which is absolutely amazing. But I found it to be absolutely exciting. We came back from that trade mission, and then in December raised 8 million. While we were on that trade mission, we had a meeting in the Shakespeare Hotel, I think it was called. I think that's what you call it, Aaron. Yeah. And an investor over there who wanted to actually buy the company and bring it to the UK. But my directors and other shareholders decided not to, because we were in a discussion with 2 of the major banks in Australia, and so that was absolutely quite exciting. The whole situation being with the group. Coming back, what we've done is that 2 of the companies that I went over there with, that's Robin from Link4 and Stab, both of those are now involved in the ongoing business that I've got now.
I didn't realise they were both involved, Dennis. That's awesome. But you just brought back so many memories. So I just remembered that Dennis actually won Best on Ground at the end of the week, because I remember you hustled your way into so many meetings during that week. You really broke the shoe leather. But that raises a good point, which is, we can definitely get the doors open for you, but in terms of getting the most out of the mission, you really do need to be ready to hustle your way in, be very clear on what you're asking for, who you're looking to meet with, and being ready to shift at short notice, like Dennis did, in terms of getting into a random lunch or a meeting and then following up and having the follow-up meeting. So you do really want to be ready to put the work in during the week as well.
Yes, that's right. We went over there with a plan. We were looking for payment rails, and so if we had to get the product that we had, if we connected it with all the banks, we would have many apps. We were looking for a global payment rails, and the global payment rails was Visa and MasterCard. So the research we had to, and we required, was to talk to the banks in the UK and see whether they would be receptacle to the product. And that then led us to come back and get invited into Visa and MasterCard. And that actually led to a partnership document being executed with MasterCard in, I think it was September 2020.
Yeah. I'm just conscious as well, we have at least 4 investors I can see on the call, and we've had some good investor applications. Cheryl came on Cheryl was at 2019 London mission. I can't remember now. But just on the investor side, so we do run an investor stream during the week. So there'll be overlaps where we have events in common, but then the investor stream is partly getting you in front of UK investors, so you can understand how they review deals, what's their practice around deal flow management, deal review, what are the nuances of investing in the UK. A lot of their investor incentive schemes in the UK are quite I want to say aggressive, like they're quite powerful. But then talking, getting insights into, so I just got to switch headphones. Can you guys still hear me okay? Yep, good. But yeah, so looking at the different incentive programs that exist in the UK, but also getting you plugged into the UK investors so that there's a roadmap for you to hand over companies as they expand globally. The second aspect, particularly for investors, is looking over the horizon. So I know just looking at, the four of you that the investors that I know on the call, you'd know what it's like when you go to places like San Francisco. It is like getting in a time machine and seeing the technology that's still sort of 5 years away from hitting market. So getting those insights, and also just the last piece would be the macro climate. It's really interesting when we get out of the bubble of Australia and hearing how, those on the other side of the world are talking about the global economy and their own predictions for where things are heading and what sectors are emerging. There's always good insights come from that as well. Any other questions about the mission, thoughts, reflections, concerns? No? Lainey, Myron, anything I've missed or need to emphasize?
No, I don't think so. I think you've covered it all. I guess I would just say, if anything springs to mind for people later on, feel free to email any of us if you have a question, and just reiterate Aaron's offer before to reach out to any of our previous participants and see how they found it, because I think sometimes that can just be the best gut check for you about whether it's right for you.
Yeah,
and do some research as well around, is it the right mark? I mean, it sounds very basic, but yeah, obviously look into what does the customer landscape look like over there? What's needed? What are the trends? What are the industries? Just doing that research, obviously, that's definitely necessary task before signing up.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to stay online for a bit if anyone does have any specific questions for themselves, like where you're at, your own application. I'm just going to stop recording.